Good evening, all. My name is Talha Köse. I am the director of SETA Brussels office. So it is a pleasure to have this event in an important juncture, important time. Recently there have been some exchange of views in Turkish public, high-level Turkish officials including Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan has mentioned that EU is Turkey's strategic priority, and we are willing to and we are aiming to strengthen our ties with our European partners and European allies. On the other hand, there have been some issues and discussions with regard to Eastern Mediterranean issue, and there have been some discussions with regard to some of the tensions between Turkey and Greece, Turkey and France. So, and during the Germany's leadership in the EU, there were some ups and downs in relationship. And this year's Leaders Summit will be important in terms of discussing relations with Turkey, dealing with the COVID-19 crisis within the EU, and probably a long-term strategic vision of the EU will be tackled in this meeting. So Turkey stands an important actor, important partner with EU, despite the fact that there may be some issues. Turkey has involved in the Libya issue. Turkey still has a significant position with regard to Syria, and Turkey also played a significant role in the Nagorno-Karabakh crisis. So, you know, those strategic issues are important, and all these things will be discussed in Leaders Summit, which will be held in December 10, 11. So today we will discuss these issues and important topics that will be discussed, and especially topics related to strategy, migration, and Eastern Mediterranean will be at the spot of discussion with regard to Turkey. So whether this will be a new beginning in the positive sense in Turkish-EU relations, or whether there will be some issues, significant problems, is a significant issue for Turkey, because Turkey recently indicated its interest in the, improving the ties with EU. So today we have three distinguished guests, and they will be discussing Turkey's position, Turkey discussion within the Leaders Summit from different perspectives. So we have Laura Battaglia Adam. She is the Secretary General of the European Parliament EU-Turkey Forum. So she has been working on this topic for a long time, and you know, she is very active in the debates and discussions related to Turkey. So I will open the stage with Laura and her perspective with regard to Leaders Summit, some sensitive issues and possible tension points, and you know, what may be the possible scenarios in this regard. So Laura, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I would just like to start by saying that I will be speaking in my personal capacity today. I'm happy to share my thoughts, but also a little analysis of where we are in terms of EU-Turkey relations and how we came to this point in light of the very important summit that will take place in 10 days from now. So some might say that we are at the lowest historical point in our relations. And while this is true, we have reached this point earlier before as well. I would say that we have been in this permanent crisis mode already for some time. And for that, we need to just look back, for instance, at the Commission progress reports on Turkey since 2014 that actually have highlighted how how Turkey has been moving away from EU's values or the Copenhagen criteria. In regards to foreign policy, for instance, the tensions that we are seeing now are also not new. We have seen how since June 2019, the Council has been adopting Council conclusions that have been calling on Turkey to abstain from any illegal or unilateral actions in the Eastern Mediterranean. And even before that, the Council in 2018 also advised not to open any new negotiation chapters with Turkey or to even modernize the customs union. In 2019, last year, the European Parliament also adopted a harsh resolution calling for an eventual suspension of the accession talks. This was only a recommendation, but this highlights a bit the atmosphere within the European Parliament and where the different political fractions stand with EU-Turkey relations. When looking back, of course, since the accession talks started already 15 years ago, it's not easy to in a way blame one side or the other one. I would say that mistakes have been made on both sides, and we need to reflect on how the accession process has worked, especially taking into account that it has never been fully activated in a way because it has been frozen since the beginning due to bilateral disputes with some member states. So we have never made a full use of this instrument at our disposal, and this is where our relations with Turkey have found a deadlock, I would say. We have lost, as the European Union, the transformative impact that we could have on EU's membership goal, and not having this prospect has also diminished our leverage on the country. So we find that now, at the present moment, for the EU, there's no positive or negative incentives that can bring Turkey closer to us. And we have also observed how the relationship has progressively become more transactional, especially in light of the so-called EU-Turkey deal on migration that was adopted a few years ago. So when it comes to our relationship with Turkey at the EU level, there's a feeling within the member states and the EU institutions that Turkey has become more of an adversary than a candidate country. And here, I think this is where the main problem lies, because Turkey remains a candidate country to the European Union, and it's bound to certain rules. But unfortunately, the transformative power of these rules is not being applied at the moment. So we find ourselves in this discussion now at the moment, as Talha was saying, where in the upcoming summit, maybe there will also be a reflection on whether this relationship should go from now. There are different discussions at the moment, but no one has so far found the magic formula on or how this relationship could actually function, because there's always the risk that terminating the accession process could have the reverse or the opposite effect of what we want to achieve. So this wouldn't be advisable. I think that the door should be open for the future in light of reforms that might take place in the next years, or easing the tensions that at the moment are creating some problems in our relationship. So for that, this is for sure, we need to work on a more positive agenda, that this is actually what the leaders have also offered Turkey in case that there would be more constructive efforts to find a way out to the current situation. So we should also be looking at that because the EU-Turkey relationship has been a very resilient one. And now the problem is mainly that we are operating in very low trust levels. So this is the first thing that we should be working on, that the leaders need to find grounds in which they can have an open and frank discussion with Turkey on all the matters that we are encountering some obstacles. So this is what happened already in the Council conclusions in last October. The leaders found a compromise in which they were still putting on the table the possibility of sanctions, but at the same time, they were offering this positive agenda. And I think we are also on the same at the same level when it comes to the upcoming meeting in 10 days from now. I don't think the positions have changed that much. It will all depend on the developments in the coming days. But we find actually that there's no unity when it comes to the member states on how to respond to the current situation. We have France on the one hand, which is the strongest advocates of sanctions, together with Greece and Cyprus. But we also have Germany, whose presidency of the Council is still at the moment in place, which is trying to have a more conciliatory position, trying to bring the two sides together. And Germany is not alone in that. There are actually a couple of other member states, like namely Spain and Italy, who are also trying to bridge those different positions. But there is, of course, as well, a group of more members which don't have a clear position, and this will all depend on the developments in the coming days. So we see now that I was referring to some statements that were made from the Turkish leadership on the need to reforms, mainly on the economic front, because Turkey has suffered, like many other countries, as a consequence of the COVID-19 restrictions. Tourism has been hit in a country that, of course, depends a lot on visitors. So now we have on the table this new economic agenda with a renewal of the leadership, which has been in a way very welcomed by the markets. But this will also be accompanied, as it has been announced, by other reforms in other areas like the judiciary or the human rights issues. So this would indeed be a confidence-building measure in which if there would be such measures being taken in the following days, weeks, or months, this would help create an understanding between Turkey and the EU and bridge some of these differences. There's another positive measure that has been taken in the last few days ahead, especially of the NATO ministerial meeting that was taking place yesterday, which is the withdrawal of the Oruç race vessel in the Mediterranean. So this is a clear sign and message of appeasement somehow, and this should continue in order to build mutual trust on both sides, and maybe continue with the confliction measures that were enacted within NATO, but also that the EU is trying to pursue to have a more closer dialogue with Turkey. So we need to define those parameters for a discussion, because obviously having this mechanism can help reduce the tensions at the moment, but doesn't solve the underlying problem. So there's a clear need for more dialogue before and after the Council meeting. It will not be a break or make moment. It will not be in any way the end of our relation with Turkey, because it lies on a multidimensional sphere. I mean, we cooperate with Turkey on a number of issues, so Turkey will continue to be important. So this is not what it's at stake at the moment, but we have to see what will be the impact of the different decisions that we'll be taking in this summit. So we have three possible scenarios. Two are more likely than the third one. The first one being no sanctions at all, which is not very likely. I would say the second most likely scenario. Here, the position of Germany will be crucial in this regard, but we have to see how the incident that happened a week ago, when a German naval force intercepted a Turkish vessel in the Mediterranean can impact Germany's position in that. We have, as a second option, having targeted measures which have been already implemented in the past against certain people or companies in Turkey, and a third scenario where we would see hard sanctions imposed against entire sectors. This is the most likely, I would say, option, and it would be the most harmful for the relationship, especially because it might lead to the opposite effect of what sanctions are trying to aim, which is trying to have less confrontation. So I think, as I was saying, I think it will depend largely on the developments in the coming days, and this will clearly have an impact on the future of our relationship, which needs to be possibly not necessarily redefined, but to find a common ground when it comes to having more trust between the different actors to be able to advance on those positive aspects that were presented by the leaders and to make progress in our relations.
For drawing this realistic picture. So there are definitely some positive and negative issues and signals for both sides. So we have lots of questions, but before getting into the questions, I'm gonna give voice to other speakers. So our second speaker is Günter Zeufert. So he's the head of the Center for Applied Turkey Studies at SVP, German Institute for International Security. So we know that in the recent months, Germany played, especially the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, played important role in keeping the ties with Turkey. So despite all tensions with Greece and France, German position was crucial to maintain some ties, constructive ties with Turkey. And Merkel also made some negative remarks last week due to this the tension in the Eastern Mediterranean. But despite all these, we consider German leadership in the last 6 months playing a constructive role in managing the crisis, not necessarily resolving it. So, Günter, I would like to reflect on what kind of roles Germany played and willing to play in the coming period. So is the abandoning of the leadership, especially in the EU, is it going to have an important role, or what is Germany's broader agenda? So ups and downs of this situation. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Talha, and also for the invitation, and also a great thank you to Laura, because I think she very aptly gave us an introduction on the matter, and I would say that I totally agree with her when she said that both sides made huge or large mistakes, and as it is easy to criticize the other side, I would like to underline that I think that the largest mistake by Europe was to stop, in a way, Turkey to encourage its reforms towards integration to Europe, particularly at the moment when the domestic dynamics for reforms in Turkey had come to an end. And we all know that this happened when the government, the AKP government, I would say in 2011, around 2011, had felt that it is now really in the center of power, and that it is not longer threatened by extra parliamentarian forces, and that it rests on a huge support of the electorate, and that therefore there is no need for further democratic reforms in the country. And in that moment, Europe also turned away, in a way, from Turkey. And I think this was a huge mistake, because, as Laura said, we have lost our leverage on Turkey, and also had lost, I think, its role as a source of inspiration, both for its closer vicinity, but also for a large group of Muslim countries, as a country with a Muslim population that is prospering economically, that is in a way realizing, conducting democratic reforms, and that rests on a huge support of its electorate. And we all know that this picture has tremendously changed. But when it comes to what Laura said, that the picture has not much changed since the last European Council or meeting from October, the 1st of October, until today, and then I would tend to disagree with her, because I think the picture has changed quite to the negative. When we look at what the European Council in October demanded from Turkey for applying or for introducing a positive agenda, then we see that almost nothing of these not any of these European expectations has been met. We know that the European Council asked for a stop of unilateral matters, and it meant naturally the sending of research vessels Turkish research vessels into disputed waters, and this has continued unabated. And now the withdrawal of the Orange Race a week before the summit very much reminds us on the very same behavior before the last summit. And we know only 2 days after the last summit, the Orange Race was back in disputed waters. And when it comes also what we saw in Cyprus, that the Turkish leadership, and together with the Turkish leadership, the newly elected president of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus has now in a way stepped back or has left the internationally accepted framework for a possible solution of the Cyprus question, namely the idea of a bicommunal and bisomal federal state, and is now working on a two-state solution. And the president of Turkey, Mr. Erdoğan, has openly voiced that he is now working for the international recognition of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. And we know that this is in contrast to not only to expectations of the European Union, but it's also in contrast to the resolutions of the United Nations. And I think, therefore, this is a serious step which Europe has to take into consideration. And even other developments that are not directly related to the expectations voiced by the European Council in October, I think have contributed to a more negative development or to a more negative turn in European-Turkey relations. And what comes to mind naturally is the activation of the S-400 missile system. No, we know this is not a matter of EU-Turkish concerns, but it's a matter of NATO and Turkey. And most of the European member states are members of NATO. And we know that Turkey, in a way, used this hot phase of the US election campaign to activate the system and avoiding harsh reactions from Washington. But that this has happened particularly in the time when Europe, in a way, offered a positive agenda, but asking for de-escalation methods and for Turkey's steps towards more consensus building with Europe, then this naturally played out, or will play out negatively with the European public. And speaking about the European public, I think we all know that the war of words between the Turkish president Erdoğan and the French president Macron will also not contribute to a better image of Turkey in Europe, because I think naturally it was a quarrel, or it is a quarrel between the French and the Turks. But we should not forget that a lot of European countries have experienced and have invited naturally Turkish migrants a couple of 10, 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years ago, and are now living together with a huge group of migrants from Turkish descent, Belgium, the Netherlands, Austria, Germany. And in all these countries, naturally, there is unease when President Erdoğan accuses the whole of Europe of Islamophobia. And disregarding the fact, I would also say, naturally, there are Islamophobic trends in the European societies, and this is a real threat for not only for the Turkish migrants or for Muslim migrants. It's also a threat for these states, for those European states, political order, because it's in a way playing into the hands of very nationalist, neo-Nazi, fascist movements that are growing in Europe. And therefore, I think both European leaders and the Turkish leadership should be very careful in building, for example, in building frontiers between the Muslim migrants as such and Europe as such, because we all know that the frontiers are not in that way. They are running between inside the European societies, where we have a lot of solidarity also with migrants, as we have a lot of critical voices also against the discourse of Macron, and playing and now in a way inciting a kind of Muslim sentiment against the whole of Europe is negatively perceived in Europe. And I have a little bit the fear that these last developments, and we are only speaking about a time span of 4 weeks now, from 1st of October to the first for 8 weeks, 2 months, a very small time span. And what happened in these 2 months, I think it has not contributed to Turkish-European relations. And I have a little bit the fear that Turkey unintendedly is uniting Europe, that has until now not been able to come or to arrive at a common policy towards Turkey. And I think really, and I don't want to speak too long, but a last word, I think we should realize what happened at the 1st of October. Because at the 1st of October, the European Council, for the first time, offered Turkey negotiations on the deepening of the customs union, modernization of the customs union. It clearly said it would be ready to take steps towards more visa liberalization, all long-standing Turkish demands. And for the first time, the European Council, in a way, moved this issue out of the framework of the negotiation process. It did not refer to the state of domestic policies in Turkey, because Europe realized that it has lost any leverage on domestic policies of Turkey. Europe had stopped, in a way, its efforts, its goal to contribute to the democratization of Turkey, but it moved the issue of the customs union into the sphere of foreign policy and said, okay, if you are stopping escalation, if you are moving into negotiations with Greece, if you are ready to solve the problem in the Eastern Mediterranean, and there is a problem in the Eastern Mediterranean, and I fully see that Turkey has a point here when it comes to the question of the demarcation of maritime zones. But the European Union said, if you are ready to de-escalate, if you are ready to enter into negotiations with Greece, and most of all, if you are ready in the midterm, for example, to adapt or to come to a solution according to the international law, and this also means to seek recourse by the International Court of Justice, then we are ready to opt or to start a positive agenda. And unfortunately, there was not a positive sign of Turkey, for example, a clear declaration that we are going to stop these unilateral actions, that we are trying to accept at the end of the day the ruling of the International Court of Justice, and therefore I don't expect a positive outcome from the next summit. Maybe there's, as Laura said, targeted sanctions or even harsher sanctions. But I don't think that the positive agenda the European leaders had talked of are still at the table.
Thank you, Günther. So your picture is a little bit more, blurry and a little bit more dark. So you definitely take into account the developments since the October 1st. And unfortunately, there were certain steps, especially with regard to Eastern Mediterranean. So definitely those developments will affect. However, on the other hand, there are also some expectations from the Turkish side. So Turkey, for a long time, failed to have any incentives in this direction, and also Turkish public and Turkish government has some expectations. So our third speaker, Zafer Meşe, He's the coordinator of the SETA Foundation in Berlin. Will reflect on Turkey's expectations, overall position in this, area, in this, circumstances, and definitely what may make Turkey happy, what may, initiate new stimulus in this regard. So, Zafer.
Thank you, Talha. I hope you can hear me. Well, in preparation of the EU summit, Angela Merkel expressed, as you mentioned, that the desired development in Turkey-EU ties could not be achieved. I think that there are many obstacles blocking the two parties from improving their relations. And at the same time, Merkel underlined that Turkey will be the main topic of the EU summit in December, which means that there is a huge focus on, or will be on the Eastern Mediterranean conflict as a priority within the other issues of the Turkish-EU relations. Germany's mediation efforts as the current holder of the EU 6-month presidency did not succeed so far. Why, I will come later to the reasons, but at the same time, NATO initiated exploratory talks between the conflict parties, Greece and Turkey. Well, I'm gonna give also my assessment what could be the outcome before I will continue. Well, I think during the EU summit, some sanctions on sectors such as shipping, energy, banking are on the table. However, to expect to be adopted at the summit is a different story, and it has to do a lot with the different in groups of countries who are just having their own blocks, etc. Some of them have very close economic and political relations with Turkey, such as Hungary, such as Italy, Spain, who have other economic-driven interests. There are others on the other side, France, especially, and Greece, of course, and the Greek Cyprus side. Well, we will see. But actually, the Eastern Mediterranean crisis is a major reason of Turkey-EU dispute. But according to my understanding, there is a more structural and deeper problem we need to touch upon in the EU-Turkey relations. The whole accession process, starting with the Ankara agreement to gain the status of accession candidate, customs union being of beginning of accession talks under a totally different framework with additional conditions than previous candidates for accession faced. Well, these are issues, but I will not go into deep historical discussion. But what I'm trying to say is that within the process of this whole long story of the bilateral ties or EU-Turkey ties, we witnessed two major shifts in EU's relations with Turkey, creating huge irritation on Turkish side. And in the eyes of Turkey, EU lost his credibility. Well, I'm not here to blame only on Europe, but we have to know that, because these two issues have still a huge impact on the recent developments. First, the accession of Cyprus as a member of the European Union, represented only by one of the constituent nation, the Greek side. Well, in a time, 2004, where or 5, where the Turkish side was really on a very positive, with a positive approach. They agreed to create a big communal federal state, as Günther Seufert now see that there should be the opportunity. It was a missed opportunity, Günther. You know it. That it was a big mistake of the European Union. We see now also still the impact on that. And the second is the Sarkozy-Merkel initiative for an alternative model of cooperation with Turkey, leaving the accession track for full membership. I will also not go into the details, but you know, it's a matter of fact that the EU shift had a major impact on Turkey's relation with the EU and triggered step by step a more autark foreign and security policy of Turkey, with a pragmatic strategy of Turkish foreign policy toward EU member states on bilateral level. Well, when we look at the Turkish foreign policy, what we witness over the past decade is a transformation of Turkish foreign policy with more focus on diversification and the understanding that Turkey should carve out a degree of strategic autonomy from its traditional partners in the West. Does not mean to cut the ties. In that sense, Turkey expects from EU to look at the EU-Turkey ties from a strategic mindset and see in Turkey a partner for settlement of regional crisis conflicts. Well, what I can say is that Turkey's shift it's kind of a shift in foreign policy with more focus on its national interest than of the interest of the allies pacts like the NATO and the European Union. And on the other side, it's not only that, because Turkey is a country still in an accession status, but within the European Union, we have we are always talking about the common European foreign security policy, but we have separated blocks, and the European Union is not able to act as a global actor on with regard to the regional conflicts. And one of the conflicts is the Mediterranean conflict, where at the same time the European Union is on the side as a spirit of the European Union community on the Greek side. So so the European Union has created is also involved in creating such a situation. And on the other hand, when we talk about the situation of Cyprus, well, we have a new government on the Turkish Cyprus side, but what should be their reaction when the Greek side sees in the meantime, there is also a change in the paradigm change, because they don't see the Turkish side as a constituent part of the state, but as a minority. You know, we know the minority situation of the Turks in Greece. They are not even allowed to say they are Turkish minorities. They are Muslims minority there. What we see is, okay, the conflict will arise and maybe escalate, but I think it will not get out of control. What I see is that, of course, France, with its own agenda within the European Union, just backfiring on some issues, and also, as you remember, has interfered in the mediation of Germany, not in a very positive way, just encouraging Greece not to sit on the table with its military support, demonstration of power in the Eastern Mediterranean area. And we have a lot of issues within the European Union where there are no formulas on common European foreign policy. So the best thing is, what is Turkey now doing, of course, is on the field to strengthen the bilateral ties with the European countries of the members of the European Union, Italy, Hungary, Malta, Spain, some of Netherlands even, and some of the Scandinavian countries, to create some kind of a channel on the common ground on the bilateral common ground with each of these countries, to come to a point where cooperation and is gonna be deeper economically, politically, and to have their support within the institutions of the European Union, which is a very legitimate way. But on the other side, Turkey does not miss to even from time to time just reiterate that it is still a strategic partner of European Union, and Turkey is sees his future also in the European Union, and will not let's say turn his shoulders to the European Union. And I think it was a clear message of President Erdoğan to set a positive agenda, which will not be enough, I know it, but it will most probably help that there will be no escalation at the summit in mid of December, and I think it will be in Berlin. And now, when we come to the common grounds, I think there are a lot of areas where Turkey and the EU still at the status can cooperate. In Libya, I think there is opportunities so far. Germany has played a very constructive role, not unlike France, which supported the Libyan occupator Khalifa Haftar. And in the Eastern Mediterranean area, Turkey also wants to sit on the table with Greece, but without preconditions. And preconditions mean Turkey has its own national legitimate rights in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea to advocate of them. So I think more than the European Union, the NATO umbrella could be a good format to discuss the issues, because at the end of the day, the only solution is on the table, and this could be really assisted by other aspects of cooperation, deepening the economic relations between Turkey and the European Union. As Günther mentioned, the customs deepening the customs union, but there is still some preconditions set also from Austria and from France. Not the domestic situation in the Turkey from European perspective, but again the Eastern Mediterranean rights of Turkey. Turkey is not only there in order to extend his influence area sphere, as it's always been mentioned, but also to protect the rights of the Turkish community on Cyprus, because in all the discussions we never heard from the European Union when it comes to the representation and the matters for the benefit of the people on Cyprus, that they never mentioned the existence of the Turkish community, which in Turkey and on the island is creating some kind of alarming, because at the end of the day, we know from 2004 that when the government of Cyprus asked the people to don't accept the Annan Plan, which they signed, the EU was a little bit angry about it, but and then promised the Turkish side that if there's no developments, they will lift the embargo on the Turkish side. And so far, why it's not happened? Because the Cyprus side blocked it, because they were in the meantime a member of the European Union. So this is the story about it. But I'm really sure that there will be, at least, as Laura mentioned, maybe a kind of light form of sanctions. But even that I don't believe, but it could be the case.
Thank you, Zafer. So we still have lots of questions and lots of scenarios to be discussed. I think Turkish public is also, lost the interest on the topic, unfortunately. So I know that issue they are discussing on the corridors But unfortunately, in Turkish public opinion, the issue is not taken too seriously. So that's, that's a kind of shame, but that's what it is at this point. So I have taken lots of notes and I have lots of questions. So, but my first question is to Laura Battaglia. So we know that, for a long time, EU lost its incentives, carrots on Turkey, and this really matters a lot for Turkey. And also there are, we know that there are lack of trust from both sides. So we hear from the voice of leaders. So we know that this the summit that will take place in next week will not be the end of anything, and it will not be the huge beginning as well. So the relations will probably move forward, up and down after that. So my first question is, what kind of incentives do you think those, European Union, the leaders can offer? And also, in addition to the, incentives, what kind of confidence building steps? I mean, I think the confidence building measures is more important than the incentives at this moment. So what kind of confidence building measures do you think are more realistic at this moment?
Well, I think that the carrots that could be offered to Turkey were already offered back in October. But as it has been discussed, there hasn't been positive steps towards meeting the conditions to open this positive agenda. And the other problem is mainly that I don't know how realistic it is to expect that this positive agenda would work. Mainly because this is not the first time that the European Union comes with a positive agenda. We remember back in 2012, for instance, or these same promises were put already on the table in the framework of the migration deal with Turkey. So since the progress on rule of law issues and human rights is blocking progress on these areas, because as it was mentioned by Zafer, there are some conditions to be met in order to start the discussion on the modernization of the customs union, but especially when it comes to visa liberalization, which I think the Council was a bit more vague this last time because it referred to people context rather than realizing this visa liberalization, because as you well know, there are 22 benchmarks, that need to be fulfilled. Most of them have been fulfilled, but there are 5 which remain to be addressed, being one of them the anti-terror law, which is the main obstacle in completing this roadmap towards full visa liberalization for Turkey. So this is why I'm a bit skeptical that even if this is on the table, this could be realized, because there are major stumbling blocks that prevent this from happening. I think at the same time, something that hasn't been mentioned so far in the discussion was the announcement of this multilateral conference on the Eastern Mediterranean. And I think this would be the right avenue to address all these issues. But of course, I mean, it also has some internal limitations when it comes to who will be participating in this conference, what would be the scope, what would be the timeline. So we haven't heard much more about this venue, and I think this is where, for Turkey, could also be the right place to advocate for its own claims and to have, I mean, to put diplomacy first rather than seeking unilateral actions. But it was already mentioned as well that this diplomacy has been being made in the last weeks as well, bilaterally with some member states. And I think this is also something that needs to be done to talk on a bilateral basis to some of these members. So just to recap with the question that you were asking me, I think that's the main problem, that the carrots and sticks that the EU can offer no longer work, and be them negative or positive. And this is what we should all reassess together. So some experts and analysts have been advocating to, for instance, opening the talks on the modernization of the customs union and make it conditional for its final implementation to progress on certain areas. I think this would be a way to achieve some progress, because by blocking all the possible channels of cooperation with Turkey, which is what has been happening, similar to the high-level dialogues, for instance, they have all been cancelled. I mean, we have less and less venues in which we can have this conversation with Turkey. So I think we need signs from both sides to make these promises achievable somehow and to make the relationship work. Otherwise, there's very little that can be achieved.
Thank you. So we will have some more questions, but before that, I'm going to turn to Günther. So Günther, one of the key issues in the Leaders Summit will be Europe's position in post-COVID-19 world. So how to handle the crisis, how to overcome some of the economic difficulties. So do you think this strategic assessment will put Turkey in a different position? And secondly, how do you think will the Biden's presidency may affect, Turkish-EU relationship? Are they really relevant for, situating Turkey? Because we know that after the COVID-19, there may be a more unstable situation in the, both around the EU and other parts of the world. So there should be some kind of, concern probably. So is this, assessment of the post-COVID-19 world and also the situation after the Biden's presidency, do you think these two things will have an impact on how EU leaders will assess Turkey?
I'm naturally, we don't know it, but I'm thinking that particularly the Biden presidency will have an impact. But I'm really not able to foresee in which direction. On the one hand side, what we always hear is naturally that Biden, unlike Trump, will not continue with his close personal relation with Mr. Erdoğan that was in a way that contributed to a smooth cooperation between Turkey and the US in the last years. And therefore, all expect that Biden will be more on the institutional way, and therefore it will be a stricter policy towards Turkey. Biden is also known, at least in its campaign speeches, of putting more weight, much more weight than his predecessor on some democratic criteria. And this all speaks for more different relations between, or difficult relations between Turkey and the US. On the other hand, we know that Biden, and here I remember what Safar said about strategic partnership, that Biden is very harsh, or will be harsher against Russia than Trump, and therefore this might be a way for Turkey to connect its own role to Biden's interest, to Biden's geopolitical interest. And I think this is also a card that Turkey is trying to play with Europe, namely to present itself as an asset when it comes to the dealing with Russia. I'm not able to tell which of these conflicting tendencies will in a way rule the relationship between Turkey and the United States, and how much it will influence the Turkish-European relations. Maybe on one thing we may be more sure. Biden will maybe show much more interest in the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean, and therefore the US may step in as a mediator on the expense of Germany. And I think this might be a positive development, because Germany, disregarding the fact that its role was in a way welcomed by Turkey in the last 6 months, but there is also naturally the point that Germany, as a member of the EU, is not regarded really an uninterested broker, but has naturally, because Greece and Cyprus are EU members and France is an EU member, it cannot be steer totally unbalanced course, and therefore it might be there might be a chance for the resolution of the problem when the US is stepping in, a mediator that is also much welcomed, I think, or will be much welcomed by Egypt and by Israel, other littoral states that have a more or less conflicting relationship with Turkey. We should not forget that Turkey is not only having difficult relations with Greece and Cyprus, but also with Israel and Egypt in the Eastern Mediterranean. On the other issue you mentioned, Tala, the post-COVID period, we all know that there are strong or serious concerns, or that let's put it that way, that Europe has been more aware of how fragile supply chains are, and too large a dependency on suppliers from Far East Asia, and that there are now a lot of thoughts of relocating supply chains. And there are some expectations that up to 25% of the existing supply chains of Europe with Asia will be relocated closer to Europe, either into European member countries or into neighboring countries. But and we know that particularly the Turkish business community is in a way looking very closely at this, and is clearly seeing that there is an opportunity for Turkey. And this, I think, would be another argument for making progress in regard to the customs union. And I think Laura's proposal is very worthwhile to be discussed. And you know, we from CATS, we also worked almost a year on the customs union, and we asked the economic communities in 6 European member states for their interest into deepening of the customs union, and all of them expressed very serious economic interests. But at the same time, we realized that the time is not playing to the advantage of Turkey, as even in member states that are where society is more pro-Turkey, member states like Spain, Italy, Poland, for example, due to these long-lasting debates on Turkey's domestic situation, on Turkey's dealing with the Kurdish question, public sentiment becomes more skeptical. And naturally, in this also, what I mentioned before, that we have a tendency towards right-wing nationalism, this naturally plays a negative role. But again, I think if we are not able to capitalize on our trade relations, which are very important both for Europe and particularly for Germany, and I think this is one of the reasons why Germany plays such a mediating role, or tries to play a mediating role, because Germany is really the country in the European Union with the strongest economic and social ties with Turkey, and has a huge interest in smooth relations of Turkey with the European Union. But therefore, I think we have to look for ways to capitalize on the trade relations and to make the customs union happening. And that's the reason why I'm so concerned about the lately developments. Yes, so far.
Thank you. I have a question from our followers. Adrian Lika asks Günther and also Laura, maybe. I mean, there's some, fatigue in public in both sides. I mean, we know that some right-wing, people are critical about Turkey, and also some Muslims in the Union are in favor and a little bit disappointed. And recently, there's some kind of public fatigue on EU-Turkish relations. So, do you think the fatigue may affect possibilities of diplomats, politicians to engage this topic, or to what extent the public opinion is relevant in this regard?
Yes, I think this is a constraint in many cases, as it is as well as it could be in Turkey. I think it plays in both the hands of the right-wing or more populist parties, But also we are seeing how the current developments are also impacting more mainstream forces across the political spectrum in the different countries. So it might be at the moment to come forward in countries where a public opinion towards Turkey has been neutral, like Spain, for instance. It has become more and more difficult to have a brave political stance towards that. So this is why the rhetoric on both sides coming from the political leaders should be lowered somehow. We've seen this war of words with France, but earlier on this has happened as well with Germany or with the Netherlands a few years ago. This is only harming the relations with Turkey and the other way around, and also the opinion that the Turkish public opinion might have about Europe, especially because, or the European Union, because there's this distrust, but also frustration about years and years of negotiating with the European Union, seeing that it's not going anywhere. So it's understandable that there's this frustration and fatigue on both sides. I would say the ordinary citizen in any country of the European Union might not know much about Turkey, but everyone seems to have an opinion, and especially when it comes to the politicians, that is the case. Turkey has always been a very inflammatory topic for some reason. So this is why we should also try to work with the civil society more in those countries, but also give more work more closely with the Turkish civil society and give depoliticize somehow the discussion. So we allow for more voices. And I think in this regard, and this has always been presented as the only tool that would break down these psychological barriers would be the visa-free regime to the European Union. This would clearly, send and bring some rapprochement between the two sides, because there's a lot of misunderstandings and not knowing exactly Turkey in the European Union or the other way around. So definitely, I think this would be the best antidote to a negative public opinion, to exactly have, on the contrary, have more relations with Turkey at all the different political and civil society levels.
Günter, do you want to reflect on public opinion?
Very shortly, I think the best example is naturally the war of words with President Macron. Macron was fighting the last election campaign against Marine Le Pen, and he will have to fight against her again. And therefore, naturally, in his rhetoric on Islamist extremism, he is not free to position himself as he wants. He has to position himself according to his extreme right-wing competitor. And therefore, it's very difficult, for example, now for Muslim leaders to take this into consideration. But if you are a political realist, then you should take it into consideration that Macron is in a way facing a very strong right-wing opposition, and we know that his standing in the French society is not at all unquestioned. We remember the Yellow Vests. We remember a lot of unrest in French society. We know that his support is declining, and therefore it's in a way a natural reaction what he's doing. Not to excuse it, but as we are used to take into account public sentiment in Turkey when it comes, for example, to the Cyprus question, where Turkish politicians say to the right or to the wrong, this is a national issue and we cannot take a step back due to public pressure and public expectations. And I think this has to be also, or should be taken into account when you are engaged from one leader to the other, that you in a way envision and take into account the domestic situation. And naturally, I agree with what Laura said. Yes.
But also there is a public in Turkey as well. I mean, highly disappointed from any step for European Union, very critical about Europe's solidarity with some of the aggressive moves of France and Greece. So unfortunately, the public opinion is in both sides. I think that's a sensitive issue as far as I see, and it is very difficult and probably slow to change it. Zafer, I have a question. I mean, as in your speech, you mentioned that in the past, Turkey managed difficult relations with Russia, with Iran, some other partners by disaggregating and compartmentalizing the relations with some of these. So although in one field they were fighting against them, but on the other field there was clear cooperation and certain ways of joint action. So do you see a similar kind of action with some of the European actors? I mean, is it possible to agree on some terms, really turn it into a joint action, and in some areas to keep it a little bit low? I mean, is it possible to move similar dynamic with European Union and the key actors in European Union? Because, despite all these, tensions with Russia, people still, especially consider Turkish-Russian relations more constructive terms. But I think there are fewer tensions between EU and Turkey and at the strategic level. So to what extent do you think this formula can work with EU?
Well, I doubt it, because as Günther mentioned, even as a mediator, had Germany to totally to balance his position with the other partners within the European Union. That means we cannot compare. We have in Europe, we have a very institutional, supranational situation where the member states of the European Union cannot act totally on their own on a unilateral base. So, of course, when it comes to stick and carrots from Turkey to some economic small countries, then it could work on the on point-to-point level. But in the foreign policy of Turkey in the region surrounding Turkey is also a product of the absence of the Americans, creating a vacuum, and they have to fill it. So it is now in foreign policy area, in foreign and security policy area, en vogue. Let me say en vogue. That if you want to have a solution, if you want to sit on the table, you have to have your boots on the ground. And this is why the European Union is so weak. European Union has a common European policy, but is not acting as a global, respected, well-known, and an actor. Only some countries do, especially France with its, I have to say, brutal and horrific African policy in Africa. But with the EU, it's quite apart from the European common foreign security policy, economically, socially, extremely good working institution, a healthy institution. And so I think that's why Turkey has has a variation of strategies in its foreign policy. On the one side, autark; on the other side, realizing and accepting the interdependency of the bilateral relations for the sake of improving the relations. Or to tackle the relations. So on the one side, to be in dispute with France, is it possible to have a close relation with Malta, with Hungary, who are really supporters of Turkey, even Italy and Spain? You have to bear in mind the last 5 to 10 years, the arms trade between Turkey, Italy, and Spain is more than between Turkey and Germany, for example, a traditional partner in arms sales policy. So it is on the lower level when it comes to nuances and minor issues, but it's possible. But the most efficient way to organize these relations in a way that, in terms of sanctions at summits, which you have to bear in mind, sanctions decision is based on consensus. So that means all member states have to opt with yes or no. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Zafer, another questions coming from our followers. So to what extent, I mean, the Eastern Mediterranean situation is one of the sticking points between Turkey and EU. And to what extent Turkey's position is the government positions or is the state position is the question. So, I mean, can any other government can change this policy with regard to Eastern Mediterranean?
You mean from the European Union or from external country can change or not? Do you mean?
No, I mean from Turkey. I mean from Turkey is any other
Well, yeah, I do understand. I mean, we discussed the issues several times with Günther. I mean, we have two countries with on the one side a maximalist position of Greece when it comes to the elimination of the economic zones, and on the other side, Turkey's it's not new for Turkey to have its position now, but now Turkey is feeling a little bit surrounded, and with the longest coast in the Eastern Mediterranean, all of a sudden out of the business, because there is a forum on gas between all countries, and the country with the longest coast is not included. You have Israel, even the Palestinian Authority is observer or member. Egypt, France has applied to become a member. So they are by intention they are just pushing Turkey out of this development. On the other hand, other side, Turkey realized that there are the trend of creating bilateral agreements on exclusive economic zones, and Turkey had to act it as soon as possible in order to prevent some countries to create some fait accompli on the field. This is something. Whether Turkey can, let's say, convince European countries, I would say, which is my personal opinion, Turkey should ease tensions with Egypt, especially, and also try to find a modus vivendi of bilateral relations with Israel. So this is the way to advocate its very national interests in the game, for not only for gas, but also for advocating the Turkish part of the Cyprus island. And so the position of Turkey is not so bad when it comes to the not island by islets, the small rocks. So in order where Greece dictates kind of an exclusive zone deriving from a small islets or island. So I don't know what could be it's not foreseeable for me. I think it is also a power play on the ground in order to create some kind of new policies on both sides, in Turkey as well, and in the European Union, because the counterpart of Turkey is not only Greece, is the European Union, we know.
Thank you. So Laura, as you mentioned, there are some disagreements among the members. I mean, Italy, Spain have constructive relations. Hungary, Malta are also in that line, and of course there are some disagreements and tensions between Turkey and France and Greece. So in the past, of course, UK played constructive relations in keeping the strategic vision of the Union, and now with the Brexit, it's outside of the picture. So to what extent do you think these internal divisions may affect the strategic vision of the Union, and to what extent this may affect the relations with Turkey? Because losing, UK and losing Turkey at the same time, or keeping them out, may really have quite difficult negative consequences. So, is there a shared vision in this return, in these terms, or is the vision with regard to Turkey a sensitive thing among the EU members?
I think it's not only sensitive, but it's difficult to have a policy with regards to Turkey. And this hasn't been the case. There has never been a long-term policy with regards to, or strategy with regards to Turkey. And we see the consequences of it now. But at the same time, it's also true that 15 years ago, when Turkey started accession talks, the EU was a different organization than it is now. So not only because the UK has left the Union, but because the world is changing. And I would say that while, for instance, some have advocated that maybe the final relationship model that will be applied with the United Kingdom could be applied to Turkey, which I have my reservations to that, because the UK wanted to exit the Union while Turkey wants to enter. So from that starting point, I think it would be a completely different one. But there could be some elements that could be used in the event that at some point, I don't know, it would be accession, full membership would be out of the table, which we shouldn't exclude. I mean, it's not that I favor it personally, but this could be a reality. But still, I think the UK plays with Turkey has probably one of the strongest bilateral relations at the moment, and has been always advocating for Turkey's inclusion into the European Union. But here, and Gunther referred to it before, I think the return of the United States to the multilateral order might also, we might see a push from that administration as well with for closer ties with Turkey, even if there might be frictions on issues like, for instance, human rights, which were not on the agenda under the Trump administration. But the world is changing, and many of the things that are happening in the Eastern Mediterranean is also a clear result of that as well. The different alliances in the Middle East, the alliances that are being built around, now it was mentioned with Israel, Egypt, and other actors in the region against Turkey now. We've seen a redefinition of the map somehow, also because of the actions of the previous US administration. So we have to see how this will evolve in the years to come. Maybe not much will change. Some of the actions will be very difficult to undo them. But still, I think today the European Commission unveiled its strategy for transatlantic relations. We have to see how this will be shaped in the near future, and what will this imply for relations with Turkey in this trilateral transatlantic relationship.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Gunther, I would like to ask this. I mean, Turkish public and Turkish decision makers always kept Germany differently, separately, as a country with some kind of strategic vision for the entire Union. And in the recent months, Germany played important roles as a mediator in Libyan crisis, and also even the Eastern Mediterranean. However, this recent event of, the commercial vessel, Turkish officials also criticize Germany with regard to this Irini operation. So do you think Germany, despite being one of the most important, the countries in the EU, can play a mediator role in the East Med crisis, continue to play significant role in Libya? I mean, is there a commitment from Berlin on these issues?
I think I have already stated that Germany has really deep-grounded economic and social interests in keeping ties with Turkey close and intact. And I think this is true for every German government, and will in a way continue even in the post-Merkel period. There might be a difference in style, but I think we have here a very structural relationship, and therefore I don't expect too many changes. But let me. For example, when you are talking about this last incident with the German frigate that in a way intercepted the Turkish freighter, I have read some, not all, but some commentaries in the Turkish press, and almost everywhere there was drawn a direct, or the question you asked, is this in a way a signal of a changing German position? And to my understanding, we can't take this as a signal of a changing position, because these are very institutionalized mechanisms. And we know that there was a Greek commander and an Italian commander of Irini at the central command. And naturally, I think the German Ministry of Defense was informed, but it was not acting according to my knowledge. And therefore, I would not apply too much to that incident, and I would not see as a signal of a changed German position. But if you allow one small remark to the question you asked, Zafer, if this is a policy of the state or of the government, and naturally you know it better than me, but I think when it comes to the defense of Turkish interests in the regard to maritime zones, I would say this is a state policy of Turkey, independent from the government. But when it comes to the way this is done, then I would naturally speak of a government policy, because as Zafer rightly pointed out, there are strong voices in Turkey that would argue for a very different style on foreign policy. And this is not only due to the question of how to deal with Egypt and with Israel. I think this is also due to the fact that Turkey very belatedly concentrated on the Eastern Mediterranean, when a lot of things had already happened. And these things could have happened or had been able to happen because Turkey's relation with Israel and with Egypt had visited such a deterioration. Otherwise, this front, or as you see it from Ankara, this anti-Turkish front, would not have been built up. And therefore, I think, and when it comes, and Zafer said it, to the huge coastline Turkey has, and when we look at the same time into a lot of rulings of the International Court of Justice, then we see the only relative weight that is attributed to islands, and it's changing from situation to situation. And you, Talha, you know it. And therefore, we have been together in webinars where this was discussed. And therefore, I think Turkey could easily rely on a very balanced rule of the International Court of Justice, because as was pointed out very clearly, the most important principle is the principle of equity. And this is also the strongest argument of Turkey. But what we see is that the style of Turkish policy is in a way helping the other littoral states to build a front on Turkey. And therefore, I would repeat, defense of maritime borders is a state policy, but the way it is done is government policy, and it is possible to revise this policy, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. I mean, we have really lots of questions coming, but I think within a half an hour, there will be a curfew in Turkey. So with regard to this COVID-19. So I think it was very frank and realistic conversation. So I really benefited a lot. And we will continue this conversation despite some possible, road accidents. I think this relationship will continue. There will be ups and downs, and we will continue to discuss. To be honest, there may be some problems in the coming days, but I'm optimistic about the overall, overall direction of Turkish-EU relations, because the long period of securitized notion of Turkey's foreign policy, I think, is coming to an end. So that's the optimistic. That's my main optimistic, incentive at this moment. So I would like to thank you all, Günter, Laura, and Zafer. So thanks for this conversation. hopefully after this COVID-19, we can come together again in Istanbul, Ankara, and Brussels to continue discuss Turkish-EU relations. Thanks all.
Or in Berlin, Talha. Or in Berlin. Because Günther is here and Laura is